Good evening, all. Welcome to tonight's board meeting. Appreciate you all being here. With that, let's stand and have the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we're going to go to adoption of the agenda. Is there any agenda items that any board member wishes to pull from tonight's agenda?
And there is a change to the agenda, right?
And there's an updated agenda on at your seat. All right, with that, I'd entertain a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Next is our call to the public, and I think we have one. Let's see. You guys have to forgive me on the glasses. Joni. Welcome, Joni. Come on up.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
I came to talk to you guys because I had heard through the schools that there were some kids that had COVID. And what they were doing was that all the kids that sat around them, they're sending them home to isolate themselves for 10 days. And I think that's very unfair. You're making a victim of the person that's already sick. If these kids aren't sick, they need to have the temperatures taken, but they're healthy. You shouldn't kick them out of school. It's wrong to do. And I want to know what science that made you come up with that idea.
We're actually going to talk about it later during my presentation or
Yeah.
during the superintendent report, so I'll share that at that point.
I would appreciate it because
Okay.
these kids, you send something home with the kids' parents, let them make sure they take their temperatures, make sure that they do everything that they should do, but the children are healthy and they should come to school. All right?
Thank you. I encourage you to stay to listen to the rest of Mr. Schultz's report. Thank you. All right, moving on. Item 6. Mr. Schultz.
All right, so this is the superintendent report. You have a report on your desk. We're starting off with staffing, a little bit different than the order on there, but it's all the same stuff. Excited to report that we're down to one opening, teacher opening. And I just learned that there was an interview today, or I learned earlier but that the interview went very well. So they're working on some options there. So we may be able to fill that. That was our girls PE teacher at the high school. Don't worry, Mrs. Ballard is coming back. She's just transferring to our school counselor position, which is we're actually excited about. She's going to be, we think, an excellent school counselor. So we're backfilling her position. So Ms. Ballard is sticking around, and we're just backfilling her position. And we think we have a viable candidate. We're just kind of exploring different options with this person. So that's positive. We do have, of our international teachers that are coming in, we do have 2 that are actually in the United States right now. We have and these are the 2 that are on the J1 visa, which is the exchange student visa, or exchange teacher visa, sorry. Our 3rd J1 visa teacher, we learned over the weekend, has received clearance to come to the United States, and she's just waiting on her plane ticket. And then the H-1B visa, it's just for both of them. We have one from the Philippines, one and our psychologist from the Netherlands. It's paperwork right now. And we need to send stuff to the Arizona Secretary of State's office. They're closed, mail only. We sent it down, got it back. We sent it down the second time, waiting for it to come back. She's approved by the United States to come into the country. She does not have the approval of the Filipino government to leave the country. That's what we're working on now. And then our psychologist from the Netherlands, we're just going through the visa process with him. We started a little bit late, so we didn't expect him to be done. In addition, I learned a new term, Shenzhen area. That sounds like it's Mr. Fogel knows, maybe as a social studies teacher. The Shenzhen region is basically Western Europe. And right now there's a travel ban from the Shenzhen region to the United States. And that was actually just extended, I think, last week and the weekend before. So we're waiting on that travel ban to expire also in order for him to travel to the United States. So we think it'll happen shortly. But we're just kind of crossing our fingers and going through the visa process anyway, so that we can bring him out. Law conference, Mr. Tona and I are attending. No one is attending the delegate assembly. We'll talk a little bit about what's gonna the agenda items at the delegate assembly, but we're not gonna have, you as a board will not have any input other than your original input, just because there won't be a representative there. But wanted to kind of let you know that. Enrollment, super excited. There's a summary sheet in the report on enrollment. We are up, when you talk about strictly ADM, 150 to 200 kids. Our kindergarten went from 130 last year to over 190 this year. Even our last year's kindergarten in the first grade is what, Brandy's here, 155, I think was one of the last numbers I saw in first grade right now.
158.
158, and they were 130, low 130s last year. So we're getting those kinders back that didn't come to school last year, they're coming back. Super excited about that. Our high school, I can't remember the last time our high school, over 800 kids right now, and that's pretty much solid. So those are solid numbers. Now that number will go down as we get to the end of as we get to the school year. That's always happens. It's a normal, attrition. And then what happens is as our high school goes down, our K-8 tends to go up at the same time. We get some K-8 kids, which I don't know how our teachers are gonna handle more K-8 kids coming in, so we're excited about that. So, last year, I think we mentioned there were 50,000 kids across the state that didn't come to school because of COVID. By choice, it wasn't their, their families chose not to send their kids. They just kind of disappeared off the rolls. We hopefully have gained our kids back, and if our enrollment holds, we haven't seen these numbers probably in 4 or 5 years, if not longer. So super excited about that, and that kind of goes into kind of the first week of school recap. I shared with you in an email, but for everyone that's watching or listening now, I attended 3 of the 4 parent meet the teacher nights, and just went out to some of the schools, first day of school. There seems to be a kind of a buzz that we haven't felt in a little while about coming to school, very positive. Maybe some of the happiest people are the parents. Being able to send their kids to school and send them off and have them, there's a sense of normalcy, I think, that we haven't had. Things are still, and that's gonna be our next thing, we'll talk about COVID, but things are still, concerning when it comes to COVID, but, it's been the most normal in the last 18 months, really. So that was exciting. Let's see. As kind of, any questions so far? So as kind of a transition and to kind of talk a little bit about what Joni was saying, we did have one student that was asymptomatic, so the student did not know they were positive when they came to school. They weren't sick. That was at a family function the prior weekend. Someone at that family function was positive. They got their family tested. She was positive as well. So there's 12 students that have been quarantined because of that. And you asked about where those numbers where that information come from. There's guidance on the
students healthy?
There's guidance on the CDC website, and there's guidance on the Arizona Department of Health Services. And the answer to your question is we don't know. That's why they're quarantined.
Yeah, the CDC has been so unreliable.
Well,
We can't go by that.
That's the information that we have available, and that's what we've decided to use, because that's the best information that we have.
Well, no, there's actually information from the American Association of Pediatrics and the numbers.
So
the low numbers of what children do and how they pass it. Now,
I'm not quite done with my presentation yet. Okay, so let me finish.
Okay.
So, but that's what's going on in the district right now. So I did give you some information about what, according to the Arizona Department of Health Services, we are in a high transmission area right now, or high transmission right now. Also, the next page is from the county health department. Or is it in here?
It's in here.
Yeah, it's in here. The county health department. So there have been, as you can see, the cases in Chino Valley and Paulden, this is over the last month, what's taken place. And so there have been 211 cases combined that average about 7 cases per day. One thing that I did want to point out is when you look at school age cases, which is the one on the far right, they've been pretty constant. Most of the days it's been less than 10 school age kids. And this is Yavapai County. So that's all of Yavapai County we've had less, and that's from 5 to 17 is the range that they have available on the county website. Okay, so relatively low numbers. One thing that I shared with you, and it should be in there, is there was some guidance from the Department of Education, the Arizona Department of Education, that talked about what Maricopa County's recommendations are when it comes to quarantine. And they are recommending putting it down to 10 days quarantine and 7 days if you test. They're still saying that you should probably mask from day 11 through 14. We can't do that, but I wanted to share some site-specific information that we have. Last year, and this comes from our nurse, and she shared with some numbers. We had like 56 students quarantined, 60 at Tech, 62 at Del Rio, 237 at Heritage, and 211 at the high school. We had a total of 17 students and 10 staff members that were COVID positive while on campus last year.
That's all in the whole year.
During the academic year, from August through May. We had 17 students and 10 staff members, okay? Of that, there was a few cases where there could have been transmission at school. What we found out is they tended to be boyfriend, girlfriend. So whether it happened at school or happened somewhere else, it was, we'll say, very close contact. The Yavapai County, the health department in their research didn't find any cases. There was never any confirmed transmission on our campuses. There was some that was suspected. There was some that was, 2 people that they thought weren't related actually were, in that they were boyfriend, girlfriend, that type of stuff. So we don't have any reports of cases. And then those that did get it, like the boyfriend, girlfriend, one got it one day, the other one was within 2 or 3 days. So there was no one that was a close contact that turned positive in days 10 through 14. So utilizing still the CDC guidelines, and that's what we're gonna use, that's what we have available to us.
They're not reliable.
And the Arizona
Does not
Department of Health
anybody
Services.
understand? They're not
We're not
reliable.
here to argue with you.
Let's let Mr. Shaw continue, please.
He cannot keep 12 healthy children out of school.
But I'm going to ask him to continue,
It's
or I'm gonna
illegal.
ask you to leave.
It's unconstitutional. I have a constitutional right to speak. It's
During call to the public, and
unconstitutional.
we are out of call to the
He
public
spoke to
now.
me earlier, I was speaking back to him, and you stopped me.
He's not speaking to her, he's speaking to the board.
And he's actually talking to us. Thank you, Mr. Antona. He's talking to us, not you.
Okay, but what he's doing is unconstitutional.
Thank you. Continue.
So what I'd like to do, and still within the CDC guidelines, just using those guidelines a little more loosely, is use the 10-day quarantine. What that also does, and I put this in the report, I believe, with the current quarantine, a student misses 7 or 8 days of school. They're out 14 days. Typically, that first day we consider a quarantine day. And so when the day they were sent home or the day we know that they were notified there was a close contact, that's day 1. They missed 7 or 8 days of school, depending on timing, whether it was a weekend, that kind of stuff. With the new guidelines, they would miss as few as 4 and as many as 7 days of school. So it kind of depends, again, timing of, was it the weekend, was it the middle of the week, everything else. And so it would save anywhere from 1 to 4 days of instruction for a student to be back in school, which is what our goal is, for them to be back in school, but at the same time for them to be safe. and for other students and staff members to be safe. Now, this would also apply not just to students, this applies also to staff members. This guidance applies to both groups, not just students.
So you're saying that the max school that they would miss is 4 days?
No,
No.
Could be.
the least number would be 4 days.
Number.
The least number would be 4 days. Depending on the timing, it could be 7 or 8 days, or I'm sorry, what does it say? Not more than 7,
Okay, not more.
but it depends on the timing of those 10 days.
Now, like at the high school or kids that are above 13 that if they chose to get the shot, does that have any, do they still have to quarantine if they've had the shot?
So that guidance is still in place. So if they have had COVID within the last 90 days, or they've been vaccinated, and fully vaccinated means both shots, if it's the Moderna or the Pfizer.
Okay.
The J&J is just one shot. But if they've had, are fully vaccinated and 2 weeks after, it takes 2 weeks, they figure, for that to kind of kick in.
Okay.
So
So if that,
If they are fully vaccinated, they do not have to quarantine.
okay,
Or if they've had COVID within the last 90 days, and in either case, you have to show us proof.
okay,
Now, the vaccination, we can actually, our nurses have access. If it was done in Arizona, they have access
That's
to
not
the
law.
quarantine logs that the state maintains, and so they can look at it there. But with a test, we don't have access to that, so they would need to provide the proof of a positive test.
So John, let me ask you a question.
It's up to you guys.
I'd like to ask you a question.
We'll let you ask this.
They
one
have to
question.
show you that they've been vaccinated to come back to school or quarantine for 10 days?
We have access to vaccination records. And all they have to do is look up the state vaccination records.
Yeah.
And the kids are on,
I'm
kids are
asking
there.
you, they have to show you they've been vaccinated to come back to school, or they have to quarantine for 10 days?
No,
two
you're
ways-
misunderstanding.
The 2 ways to get out of being quarantined. They're either quarantined for 10 days and then they're done, or according to the guidance, if they are fully vaccinated or have had COVID within the last 90 days, they do not need to quarantine. That's what the guidance reads.
It doesn't, it is not a law, and it is not a mandate, and these children do not have to do this.
No one is telling them to go get vaccinated. What we are saying is, if you've been vaccinated, you do not have to quarantine for 10
Okay, but
days.
there's lots of kids that don't want to be vaccinated.
So they have to quarantine for 10 days.
Okay,
That's the
that
CDC
is
guidance.
illegal. That is illegal. You cannot make
Thank
children put,
Thank
okay,
you,
all right,
thank you.
you're all getting recalled.
So be it. Item 7B1. I apologize, were you done?
I am done, but there may be questions.
Yeah, could I ask a
Questions?
question?
Yes,
Thank you,
please.
Matt. Madam President, John, is there any possibility of the county health department coming to Heritage and the high school and doing a vaccination clinic?
So, it's something that and typically they will not, but we can provide a vaccination clinic through Spectrum. I think Spectrum is who the Prescott Unified used. We kind of piggybacked on that and kind of got that information out. I do know that both the Safeway Pharmacy and Walgreens has vaccinations, and they're free to kids.
Yeah.
So they can take them there and get vaccinated in both those.
Well, you see my point.
Uh-huh.
Bringing them to the schools is gonna get a lot more response. Remember, the staff, we were all fortunate. And that's the reason I asked specifically,
Mhm.
any chance, whoever could sponsor it could set something up at those, because those are the schools where our kids are 12 and older.
Well, the other issue is we want the parents there.
You would
Right.
So
still
we
be parents.
don't want to do it without the parents,
Oh, sure.
the parents being there. We can schedule something. We also have gotten information out. Or we can get additional information out about Walgreens and Safeway. They would love it. To be honest, they would love anyone's business. And again, it doesn't cost anyone to do it. It's free to everybody. The one thing I want to mention, this is mostly for those watching, is we're not requiring masks and we're not requiring vaccinations for kids to come to school. The only impact the vaccinations have is it opts kids out of having to be quarantined. And Jody brought up, these are healthy kids. We don't know that they're healthy. not until those 10 days have passed do we know that they're healthy. And so that's the question, and that's the concern that we have.
Well, I think your example of the couples, you know, when one tests positive day 3 and the next one tests positive day 6, you have those 10 days. You do not know who is sick and who is not within those 10 days.
Right.
Well, I think this is good news though, to go from 14 to 10 days.
Oh, yeah. No, and our numbers,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
our numbers are not nearly as scary as the statewide press makes it out to be. But my main concern is still, if you look at the state of Arizona, you have it by county, our percentage of vaccinated people is still way below the national average. And that's why I raised the question with John. You know, just knowing people, if you had a clinic, you know, at the end of school and saying, okay, Safeway, whoever is gonna be here, parents come on down, bring your kids or meet your kids, and you get vaccinated from 4 to 6 o'clock, Thursday, whatever. I'm just trying to think of how we can get the needles in the arms of people that just don't want to go to the effort of going out and getting it themselves.
You know, to kind of give you a story, you know, this is just something that I heard from the nurse today, because we were talking about this. So she's had to contact those 12 parents about quarantine. And, you know, more than one of those parents have said, if this is what it's gonna take, this is what's gonna happen, I'll just go get my kid vaccinated.
Right.
And so, you know, and I guarantee this is not gonna be the first, I'm not gonna be the last. We're going to have additional students and staff on campus, COVID positive. We're going to continue to quarantine kids. You know, my guidance to my nurse tomorrow, the nurse tomorrow is gonna be 10 days. But to be able to get out of it, one way one proactive way is getting the vaccination. It's not necessarily proactive to have COVID, but you know.
I just want to make it clear that everybody knows that we're not pressing people or the kids to get vaccinated. It's the parents' decision on what.
Absolutely.
So I just want to that would be my only concern about hosting something here and say, come get your kid vaccinated, is we're not pushing them on kids. I don't want our board being represented that way. You know, we are all entitled to our own opinions, but it's the parents' decision on what they want to do with their children. So I just want to make sure that, you know, we're not coming across as totally vaccinated. You know, everyone has their own opinions. We're looking out. The reason why we're having to do dropping it down to 10 days of quarantine is because we're looking out for other kids. We're looking out for our school not shutting down again, you know? So I don't know why, but my blood is boiling because we just had controversy in here where it shouldn't be. We're just trying to do our best up here, and everyone has to remember we are volunteers that sit behind here on this board.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Schultz? Do you have any other?
I would just support what Tony, Peter was saying. And anything that we can do, I think we have a responsibility to help our community, to teach, to educate. And in any way that we can do that, I think we ought to. We need to lead.
That's it for me.
Well, we're going to move on to item 6B8. Mr. Livingston.
Okay. So I gave you, board members, I gave you 2 reports, and I'd like to just summarize them, just 8 numbers, 4 numbers for each report. The first report is for last year, 2021 year, ended June 30th. We have until about August 15th, depending on if we need to or not, pay for goods and services received up to June 30th. We had 3 checks go out last week, and I believe we've got 1 for this week as well, but all the utilities are paid. It's basically a closed fiscal period, that 2021 year. And to summarize that year, we started with 2.9 million overall cash. We lost 375,000 right out of the gate. The state called it the distance learning percentage. So because they realized that we had students at home, in some cases they call that distance learning, we lost that money right out of the gate, and that came right off our operating budget. We ended the year, and it's again not completely done, right around 2,420,000. So about a net reduction of about 480,000. You could point, if you wanted to, at that distance learning percentage loss. I'm not gonna say that's directly related or directly, I can't say there's a direct correlation, but it's an indirect correlation. We've lost that money, our budget would have been that much higher. Would we have spent the money had we had it? Maybe, but I don't think so. To me, that's part of the reason that we went from 2.9 million to 2.4. So that's just a big picture overall cash. We ended the year with 2.5% of the budget available in our operating fund. And we right now have 17.4% available in the 21-22 operating fund, which means we've got a lot of salaries encumbered and they're already booked and ready to be paid. We've got a lot of services. We've already got 380 purchase orders for goods and services in the new year, the 21-22 year. We did those starting June 8th, and the sites are just tremendous. They know what their routine charges are. They got those purchase orders for the most part entered by about July 5th. Most of them were entered by July 1st, and we got those printed and out to the vendors, all of our suppliers and utilities. So we've got a tremendous crew. Every site and every office has that. We get those, and so we still got 17.4% of our operating budget left to deal with. Capital, we ended with 6.7% left. This year, we've got quite a few things. We've got a new scissor lift that's right here in the gym. If you really want to see a nice scissor lift, we've got a really big one.
I haven't seen one recently, but,
Yeah, you might get a test drive if you really want to. Our maintenance crew is pretty proud of it. We got a $42,000 scissor lift for about $29,000. And our local Chino rentals helped us get it, so we're really glad about that. And they can do a lot of stuff with it. We've got a nice tractor already. We've still got 46% of our capital left. For adjacent ways, we had a budget last year of $329,000. We spent $129,000. This year, we added $100,000 to the budget. The only project I know that we're going to do with that adjacent ways money is a $200,000, perhaps $200,000 fire lane at the edge of the farm property. And I think we talked about that a little bit. So that's 100% available. If something else comes along and jumps ahead of that fire lane project, you'll probably be hearing about it, but I don't think so at this point. And the overall budget, I think, is we looked at what we estimated for the 21-22 year overall count net students. We budgeted 2,150, and my hat goes off to Mr. Scholl and Ms. Daniels. We've actually got right now to 2,184 net. So we're up about 30 at this point. Sure, there's 2,300 students enrolled, but when you take it down to the net, it's somewhere in half. Some of those kindergarten and preschool students go down in weight. So we're still 34 students at this point above what we budgeted in the 21-22 year. So that's a really positive sign. I was down in Tucson 2 weeks ago at the state school business officials conference, and some districts are just nowhere near as good a shape as Chino Valley District is, just based on enrollment and other factors. So any questions for me? I gave you both reports, but that's a quick
great to
summary.
hear. That's great.
John, for the board's information, John did not get a call from me today because this report looks so good and so impressive. There's nothing I could ask, John. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. Mr. Livingston already did item 7B1B also along with A. Thank you for that. So 7B2 is our student activity fund. Mr. Scholl or Mr. Livingston, who would like to?
Mr. Livingston.
I can take that one. This is a report for the end of the month of July in the new year. And really, we've had no revenue or expenses booked. Now, I've talked to the sites, and there's definitely plans for the $118,400 that we're bringing forward, but July was just a no activity month for these funds.
We'll start seeing activity here quite soon, I'm sure.
And that's really all we had for the activity. Everything that we ended the year with is still in the bank account, and so we're in really good financial shape there too.
Again, any questions or comments on the student activity report? All right, thank you. Item 7A through D, I've been calling that 7, so those are 6s. Item 7A through D, the consent agenda. Would
I
anyone like
move
to?
to approve the consent agenda, all items as stated.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Fantastic. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Mrs. Cox. addition of one kindergarten teacher at 10, huh?
Yes. Good evening. I am here to address the need to hire an additional kindergarten teacher. We are up to 198 kindergartners. And so it's a lot of kids. Even at that many, we're still hitting our max. And believe it or not, all the little bodies are there and very happy to be there. So we have a sub right now that we're using to kind of take off that stress. And if the position is approved, I'd like to probably put her in that position full time. So she is a certified teacher, comes with lots of experience. But right now we just need a position to take some of the burn off of what we're feeling.
What is the possibility of having to add yet another class if we're already at capacity?
There's a good possibility
Do we
of that.
have the room?
With some shifting, if there's some movement that we can make. So right now, our classes are sitting at, with this, because I have a sub in the classroom right now, sitting at 27, and I've pulled, some of the kids aren't in the classroom full-time, so I've looked at those, and if they come in with aid support, we've taken those ones out as well, but we're still a lot of kids in the classroom, so it's a great problem to solve. When I came to Mr. Scholl and Mrs. Daniels and said, help, they said, it's a great problem to have. Didn't know we'd cross it quite this soon, but here we are. So we don't know. We've enrolled another one today. Another dad came in to tour the school with 5 children.
Oh, please not all 5 kindergartners.
No, it's a preschool, a
Bless their
kindergarten, a
hearts.
first and a second grader, and the other one's not in school yet. But I was like, okay. So it's a great problem to have. We're just trying to figure out how to still give them an education and do what we need to do.
Yes, I'm asking the question to be a bit proactive. If we're going to have to come back next month and add another class.
To be determined.
To be determined, yeah.
Okay,
We really don't want to have
jump in.
put positions in place that we don't have the students for. We want to make sure, our philosophy has always been, we need to see the whites of their eyes and make sure they're really here and staying. Sometimes they come in and then it's a temporary and they move around, but so far they've all been here and they're just loving life every day, so.
I think it's so great when I pull up now to drop Duke off, that you can see all their smiling faces, because, last year we had our masks on, so it's so great to see how happy all the kids are to go back to school.
It is, and like Mr. Scholl said, it's a truly different buzz this year. They're just so excited to be there. And yes, we're still crying a couple of little ones off of their moms just because they don't realize mom's not staying with them. But I have actually reached out to all their parents, and within minutes, it's fine. Separation, just right at the gate, it's that separation. But after that, they're perfect, so.
I have a kindergarten story, just a quick one. It was the first time ever I received a business card from a kindergartner.
I do have one. Yes, I do have one.
I have one
She,
Yeah,
sends
you
her
got
little
the same
business
one.
card around. So, she's a CEO in training.
Yes.
That's what it says. So, I
Put her
think,
in ag.
yeah, I have to watch.
Teacher ag.
Yeah, I have to watch my job because she might be after us.
I do want to say that there's been a teacher identified. You will not see them on the personnel report. The reason is they are return to work retiree. So they're actually going to be, if you approve the position, they will be hired through a third-party contractor because they have to be out of the retirement system for a year before we bring them back. So I think we can bring them back in the springtime
I
sometime.
think that's what
So
she
you'll
told me.
probably see her name on the personnel report in the spring, just not now.
It's a formal staff member.
Yes,
Should in fact be under contract this fall.
correct. Correct.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, Ms. Cox, wasn't clear to me what you were saying, so for clarification's sake. The class sizes right now are 27 per with the sub. And so when we approve the position, they'll remain as 27. Yeah, okay.
And that's taking all of my extra kids out of the classroom.
Those will be the kids in
And they're not
self-contained
extras, but
classes.
they're in the self-contained classrooms, or they come with para support, so then they have an extra teacher that comes in, so I don't count all of that. So,
Any other questions for Mrs. Cox? Great, then do we have a motion to approve another kindergarten
I'll make
teacher?
a motion of the approval of the addition of one kindergarten teacher at Territorial.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
thank you.
Go higher. All right, item 8B, addition of 3 paraprofessional bus aides.
So right now, we have 3 staff members that are assigned to schools and assigned in, I believe all of them are in self-contained classrooms. And then they also do bus duty. So they actually cannot spend as much time as they're supposed to in that classroom because they're also doing special ed. They're on aids for special ed buses. So that's where we have an extra body on a bus that transports special ed kids for safety reasons mainly. We want those kids to be safe. And so there has been concern amongst the principals that we're pulling these staff members out of the class when really they need to be in the class. So these 3 positions would replace those staff members. So that we would have dedicated aides on school buses, not just trying to fill up somebody's to 10 hours and taking them out of the class when they really need to be in the classroom. It's more hours and we actually need the time. We're actually short. We don't have aides on every single bus right now, special needs bus. So this would help with that. And so we would take away their time that they're on the buses. And that difference would be about $10,000. I'd say about $10,000. They would get a little bit more in the classroom, so they would lose all that time. So they're maybe in the classroom only 8 hours. They may be in the classroom 9 hours. So they may gain an hour of time in the classroom, but lose 2 hours of time on the bus. That kind of thing. So we have a discussion tomorrow because there's some concerns about this, but this would give us the flexibility to follow through on this if we find it necessary.
So as I understand then, John, the paraprofessional aides that we have now will be able to stay totally in the classroom, and these new ones will be for bus service?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Anyone else have any other questions regarding it? Mike, Annie? Nope. All right, thank you. All right, would anyone like to make a motion to approve the addition of 0.4 professional buses?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Item 8C, our personnel report.
All right, we have a certified sub, 4 classified employees, 5 classified subs, 3 resignations, 1 certified change, 6 classified changes, 3 coaches, 6 extra duties, and I warned you, 114 timesheets. So it should slow down now that we're not doing as much timesheet work since we're done with the summer. But that gives you an idea. There is a supplement, so make sure you refer to the supplement as well.
All right, any questions on the personnel report? Has everyone had time to kind of go over it? Okay, moving on. Need a motion to approve the personnel report with supplement.
Make a motion, we approve the personnel report with supplement.
Second?
Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, item 9A, the approval of the proposed 2022 political agenda. As Mr. Scholl mentioned before, we don't have a representative for the delegate assembly, but if I'm correct, these are the ones that we kind of came up with that we emailed. Okay.
Right, so this was emailed to ASBA. They took all the member districts' comments and did the red line version. So these are the changes and additions that they made. My understanding is they're not going to address every single item We're just gonna address the changes that were made, or recommended and keep it at that.
I'm trying to remember what ones we submitted. I mean, I'm sure there, at least one got in here somehow. That's what I figured, yeah.
I have a question, please.
Yes, please.
What is, so on the second page, or first page, I guess, what is the definition of useful life building, on the buildings?
That's
What is-
something that would be in the school, well, I think it depends on the construction. For example, the Kirkland School, but they have a building over 100 years old, I believe. What's that?
I said, wow.
Oh. I thought you had a comment to
I was like, wow.
Their building's over 100 years old, but in addition, other problems were it was built in a floodplain. So they've been flooded out. They've had classrooms set up in their cafeteria, on the stage, in their library. So they received $3 million to replace their building. Where, you have newer buildings that may have exceeded their useful life. Then you have really old buildings that were built really well that may still be useful. So I think it really depends on the construction and use of that individual building to determine what its useful life is. But that would be something that the SFB School Facilities Board would determine in addition to any engineers or architects or contractors that a school district could provide to show, hey, this is crumbling, we need help there.
Penny, it's actually an engineering term, and the basis of it is when it costs to repair the things that need to be repaired exceeds the cost of replacing the building, that's the useful life. That's the engineering, the technical engineering term. So, plumbing has to be repaired maybe more quickly than the walls do. Roofs go out more quickly, but each of them has a component useful life. You gotta re-roof every 10, 15 years. So the bottom line is when the cost of bringing it up to current code is more than it costs to build a new building, that is the useful life.
Okay, makes sense. And I wasn't particularly crazy about this last sentence, did you see that? It seems like it's a little opposing a legislation that has this intent to lessen or curtail the legal authority of school boards, blah, blah. It seems like that could be messy, especially when it comes to the mask mandate, or no?
Well, I think one of the main tenets of the ASBA is local control. And that's really what this is saying. They want a school board to have control of what happens in its school district. Because what Chino Valley is a lot different than Phoenix Union. Elfrida, which is a little tiny school district, is different than Flagstaff, say. So they want the school board to have the authority to make its own decisions. And so that's really what that is. And with masks, a lot of people think that each school board should have the authority to make it. This would, so what they're doing is opposing any statewide mask mandate is what this really would entail. And it's not just masks,
So
but.
it would also oppose the no mask mandate.
Correct,
So no matter what,
correct.
it's just seems messy to me.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
politics is messy.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes, this is really politics in
Yeah.
a nutshell.
John, I had only, I'm sorry, Penny.
I'm done.
I have just one question myself on it. And it goes to this improve outcomes one where it talks about standardized testing, rethink and redefine the role and purpose of standardized testing and develop meaningful assessment. It sort of implies that the existing language, they don't like standardized testing. Am I reading something into that that's not there?
And, I'll let Cindy comment on that in just a second, but I think what they don't like, well, a couple things. We've had multiple standardized tests that haven't been consistent over multiple years.
Right.
And they sometimes use standardized tests in ways that are not appropriate. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
That's, results could be punitive when a school had little control over it, for example, how the students did or didn't do. And I think too, when it says meaningful, for example, our AZM two that we gave for a few years and then didn't give because of COVID and then gave, none of the data that we receive can be tracked to specific standards. It's so broad brushstroke that it's virtually meaningless. It gives you something that's in such a large aggregate that it's not a meaningful assessment. All it allows is for the state to assign letter grade or use it in a computation for assigning academic value to a district. But then in turn, and Carolyn would tell you this, it's not useful to make instructional decisions on. And so we waste lots and lots of time on standardized
Giving you
testing
tests,
that doesn't help us be able to improve instruction or student learning outcomes. And so I think that has been part of it that's driven it, is, we had a period where the information we got, we could drill right to a particular strand, concept,
Right.
standard, and that era is passed us by.
And they also make fiscal decisions based on this. There's school districts
Rewards.
that get rewarded for these test results
Oh,
that
yeah.
other districts will never have an opportunity. And in our case, territorial has no,
We'll never do it.
is it impossible for territorial to get that because they don't get the test. So, that's kind of what they're referring to, I believe.
Well, Cindy, is this the way you would word it? I mean, the whole thing sort of is just strange, and I understand exactly what you're saying. Been around long enough to remember the old tests. It just, that whole section just sounds curious to me. We're not gonna be there, so we can't bring it up. But what you're saying makes all the sense in the world, and I'm just curious as to where you see ASBA going on this. Are they saying restructure it or redefine the purpose, redefine the technology? Where are they going on this?
My feeling is that don't use it for punitive measures when the same assessment doesn't give schools an opportunity to understand where they need to improve specifically. So I think it's the disconnect.
Uh-huh.
And
But then it's
that's
addressing
really
the
what
State
it
Board of Education as much as anything else then.
And it falls back on them, and unfortunately, there has been, because of the way Arizona approaches standardized testing, it's become and you've heard me say it for a decade or more, it's a political football. It's a way to assign value to districts that are more affluent and assign less value to districts that aren't or have higher mobility rates or, things like that. And so I think meaningful in turn helps you know better how to help the students learn what they need to learn. And helps the parents understand what did my kid learn or didn't learn this year. And we've gotten really far away from that, and it's been very frustrating because it feels like we dedicate so much of our time to something that doesn't help kids. And so I think that's where they're going with it. And, there's been a step in the right direction moving to the ACT platform at the high school. Like when we did away with kids having to pass Ames to graduate from high school, then there were, several years where there was no skin in the game. So why try? Who cares? It doesn't matter if I pass or don't pass. But then the school's punished with a bad mark because the kids said,
Right.
And then, but moving to the ACT platform, there's at least theoretically, if a kid knows that they can take this test that somebody else is paying for and use it for college admission, then maybe they'll be willing to do better so they don't have to pay to take it on their own. So I don't know that that's gonna rectify it because not every kid is that forward thinking. Just saying. At 16.
Mr. Vogel, you had a comment, question,
Oh,
or was it answered?
it's sort of a funny one, but then I have another comment. So Penny, as I recall,
Uh-oh.
back when we were surveyed about the ASBA political agenda,
Mhm.
you were the one big advocate for, let's strengthen local control.
Well, I was just asking because the mandate for masks or not,
Understand?
seems like it would be a way now to pass it back to the board.
My second comment.
Please.
I see that the ASBA is recommending, let's see, under the category, adequately and equitably fund district schools to at least the national median per pupil funding. And that's loaded. I would like to draw everyone's attention toward it is the 1, 2, 3, fourth bullet on that first page. Advocate to protect voters' intent in funding K-12 education and oppose legislation that attempts to supplant or divert additional, got my thing in the way. Additional, oh, no, I just X'd it out. Additional voter-approved funding, for example, 301 and 208. I want to draw everyone's attention to that because we can currently, right now in this moment, we can fight the effort of the legislature to do just that with 208. And just to alert everyone that there are referendums and petitions going around to, in effect, do just as the ASBA is recommending there, as it relates to 208. That's probably all I can say on the topic here, okay, at this moment, but if anyone's interested, I've got petitions.
All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns, anything regarding this agenda item?
It does say action discussion, but there's really no action to take since there's no representative at the meeting on that Saturday.
Okay, is everyone comfortable just moving on then? Don't wait for an answer. All right, item 10A, this is just a first reading of revised policies. There's a lot of them.
So we saved you the problem of having a second volume for our,
I think you're on the wrong agenda.
first reading of result.
There's a revised agenda and we skipped John Livingston's
Oh, I thought that was the
agenda
next,
Oh,
no,
sorry.
that's my fault, I filed it incorrectly.
item. Oh, it's okay.
Probably there.
I actually have it as a
It's
10B.
on this one. Yeah.
Oh, on the
Yeah,
actual,
capital plan.
my capital plan says 10B, or
90.
it's the glasses thing? All right, Mr. Livingston, capital plan, please.
Sure, so what we have, board members, is a really quick summary. Hopefully you've got this document, and it says on the top, district capital plan, that's for the current year, 21-22 fiscal year. And there's a website that I went on to 5 days ago, the 9th or 5th of August, and there's about 8 things you fill in there. And this is the very first thing. And I've heard that in the last couple of years, this has been a board signature and a board approval item. It never used to be. But again, the school facilities board is extremely aware that involved districts make better decisions than uninvolved districts. So there's 5 things on the capital plan. You don't see all of them, but you see the highlights here. 1 is the ADM projections. 2 is there a lot of growth in the district in residential developments or other developments. 3 is, are there SFP current projects going on that are funded, new construction? 4 is a locally funded project list. And then number 5 is that we just have to bring it all to the board. And you have to look at it, please, and consider it. I'd just like to use an example that I was looking up some ADM numbers. This district back in 2018 had 2,263 students at the 100th day. 2,263. Right now, we're projecting, if we keep everyone, 2,186. That's still a 77 student reduction. So when I went through and Mr. Scholl and I reviewed these things, ADM is hovering around that 2,200 plus, 2,200 minus for the next 20 years. That's the projections that we put in. So they're seeing that we're not a Buckeye Elementary School district. Back in 1999, 2000, 1,176 students. By 2009, 4,153. If we're seeing tremendous growth like Buckeye Elementary did, SFD wants to know about it, and Kirtland's definitely the exception. They're not getting a school because of growth, they're getting a school because of built on a floodplain. I talked to their business manager, Miss Perry, I'm not sure exactly what.
She's a superintendent, Michelle Perry.
Okay, so I met her at ASBO and we talked for a minute. But, yeah, they've been flooded several times. It's got nothing to do with growth. I think she said 84, 86 students, somewhere like that. But they just can't operate in that facility, in that site. So that's a very unusual situation for the school facilities board. Usually they get involved. There's only 4 other schools in the state that are being replaced and fully funded by the SFD. And none of them have this problem like located on a floodplain. It's all due to growth and deterioration of the current building. So if you approve this tonight, then I'll take this document, upload it to the school facilities board website, and 2 of the 10 items then require your approval. One of them is the preventive maintenance plan. We're working on that as well, and that we're used to signing and submitting to them. And then there's other things like,
There's vacant space,
yeah, unused space in the classrooms.
and new square footage.
Excluded spaces and how
Right.
we treat excluded
There's
spaces.
some bond questions that we don't have to worry about.
So we've got no override language, we're not coming to you for an override, so the school facilities board wants to know it all. So I'd appreciate it if you approve this capital plan. It doesn't have a lot of information, but it has to be approved.
I understand.
John, I don't want an answer now, you and I can get together later, but when I reviewed this, he gave it to me last week. Why do these percentage changes bounce up and down?
But this,
You don't have to answer it now, but
with enrollment,
yeah, with the ADM.
well, all I can say is, they like it if you're aware enough to show some variation. It's not based on kindergarten numbers out there, it's not based on the 3-year-old growth rate or birth rate, it's not based on that, it's just based on a slight variation, that's all.
If you look at these, I don't get numbers, obviously, it's stupid, there's no consistency there. They're showing like fiscal year 25, a 5% decline in ADM. And there's 2 more negatives, and then that's the elementary school. The high school, does the same thing. I just,
Yeah.
I have no idea the logic or
I
the
can
math
discuss
they're
it with
using
you.
to create these tables.
I can
That's
discuss.
enough said.
I'll make a motion for the approval of the district's capital plan.
I was so moved.
Any questions or comments? Fantastic, all in favor? Aye. Okay, now we're gonna get on back to item 10A, the first reading of the revised policies.
So back to my comment, sorry about that, shot the gun a little bit. We saved you about 122 pages of paper by emailing you the full packet. You should have received that email that had kind of a summary of each of the changes within each policy, and along with the actual red line version of each policy. So again, this is the first reading. We've already done, it talks about deleting regulation JICA-RB. That's already been done. You did that, I believe, at the last meeting. And that's a regulation that can be done in one meeting. But this is just, we're here to answer any questions, concerns. One of the things this is like this. These are all the changes that have been developed in our policy based on changes that were done at the legislature this spring. So changes in state law filter down to our policies, and the ASBA has analyzed the state law and recommended these changes based on the policy, or based on the law, changes in law. So that's where it comes from. But we're going to be discussing some of these, not all of them, tomorrow in our district leadership team meeting. Some of them are important. You can't suspend, not that we suspended a ton of kids at the, at Del Rio and Territorial, but that's actually forbidden now. There's some of that. There's some sex ed language. There's various things that we will discuss tomorrow that apply directly to the schools. Some of the stuff applies to, there's employee issues, there's some driving issues, some transportation issues. There's some board issues on here. Anyway, here to answer any questions, and if I don't know the answer, we have until the next meeting to find them out.
Any questions?
Gentle silence.
Then let's move on to recommendations for early admission in kindergarten. Mrs. Cox.
I'm back.
In another classroom.
So these aren't the 9, what I'm coming to you with is I have 9 parents who have filled out formal requests to do early admissions. They don't meet the cutoff date by August 31st to be 5. One is, I'll be honest, September 1st. And so we have them attend our jump start. All teachers screen them and then they come together. They don't know who the early entrances are so that it's fair and it's not, oh my gosh, we're not taking them because we have to make. And then we come together, we review all the data and go over it. Out of the 9 kiddos that requested early entrance, most of them have done preschool as well. Nobody had any comments on them, and the teacher's recommendations were to take all 9 of them at this time. So, per policy, I come to you to ask for your approval to admit these 9 kiddos.
Just a real quick question. I noticed that 4 of the kids that had not attended preschool.
Not necessarily our preschool, but have attended other preschools.
Okay, so they were not shown on here, so.
Right.
So they've had the same preparation, all the kids have had the same
Some
preparation.
have different, I mean, they're not through our preschool,
Yeah.
but a home co-op preschool or something. And so they've all been somewhere, done something.
Okay, so they're all equivalent in their readiness for coming in.
And that's part of it, because early entrance, we wanna make sure that their academic level is high as well as their social and emotional, and they're able to separate. Like I said, none of these stood out and they all tested in the higher average range for their abilities right now.
So I'm gonna play devil's advocate real quick. If we didn't admit these kids, would we still need another classroom? Okay.
Yes.
Had to ask.
And likely if we didn't admit these kids, they'd probably go somewhere else.
Yeah, they can go other places.
I don't have any
and
intention
get
not to.
admitted and then come back to us.
Just asking. Just a question. Okay, any other questions?
Nope, I'll make a motion to approve the early kindergarten entrance for these students as policy JEP.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, K-8 Friday school plan for the 21-22 school year.
So we had a great summer school and it was very well attended. Kids got some good instruction. We tried to catch those kids up that missed stuff during the school year last year. But in talking with our Territorial Del Rio and Heritage Middle School principals, we really decided we want to be more proactive in how we address that falling behind academically. And so instead of just waiting all year for kids to fall behind and then addressing it at summer school, really the plan is to, and that you approved tonight, is to start early September. We get these kids, we bring them in on Fridays. There'd be 20 different Friday sessions out of the about 36 weeks that we have. We don't do it before breaks, holidays, things like that. So nothing where parents would be imposed or really it would be a big deal. It's invitation only for those kids that really need it, not open to everybody. We provide transportation. It would be 30 kids at each grade level, and which is between 15 and 20% of the kids. And we give them additional instruction to keep them up rather than let them fall behind and try to catch them up at the end of the year. It's likely that this would replace summer school. That's the idea, that we wouldn't need summer school for these kids if we do this. It's something that we have done before and that we feel we've been successful with. And we have the funding to do this through ESSER 3. It would go towards the 20% learning loss that we're required to do. So, Cindy, I don't know if you have anything else that you want to add or any of the principals want to add about Friday school, but
I think this is a really great
It's been
idea.
super successful.
I think it's a good idea too.
It's pure coincidence. I was listening to an NPR program on the radio this weekend, and it was talking about kids falling behind, and it's exactly what the program is recommending. It says you have to have, during the school year, these catch-up opportunities. It's just ironic that it's exactly what John is talking about. So clearly, on the national level, they're thinking the same way.
That's a great idea.
I wouldn't expect anything less.
What's nice is it will have some time to do some assessments between now and the time that it starts. So we'll be able to identify those kids early, get them in early. We can either, if they get caught up, they don't come back, we can invite other kids, so they're not stuck the whole year if they get caught up. And then we can we do assessments periodically, and so we'll know where they're at and then invite other kids as the openings open up.
Perfect. I'll make a motion for the approval of the proposed K-8 Friday school plan for the 21-22 school year.
A second?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
I just have one. Summer school for the high school is likely gonna be similar since it's a different situation. It's a credit recovery type of situation, so there would be no changes, and so there still would be summer school for the high school. Would be reevaluated whether it's necessary for K.
Motion on the floor. Any other questions or comments regarding that? All right, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, we have an open enrollment exemption for a 10th grade student.
Okay, just a warning, if we want to talk about specifics about the student, I believe the parent's here. So she did a really good job about expressing her concerns in a letter that all you got, it's in your packet as well. But if we want to talk specifics about that student, we want to move off to executive session, but if necessary. But we have a family that actually moved into an area they thought was in the district. Turns out it's close, but not in our school district. The program that their child would attend is closed to open enrollment. The family owns property in Chino Valley, has given proof that they intend to move here. And the family is requesting to exempt the family or allow an exemption to open enrollment so that they can start their child here when they plan to move here soon. My concern was a transportation issue. We don't have the resources to transport. I believe the mom has expressed that she is willing to transport her child. And then once they move, the family moves to Chino Valley, that would be revisited, so.
Okay, before discussion, does anyone want to go to executive session?
I'm gonna say no.
Does anyone feel the need to go to executive session?
No.
I don't.
Okay, fantastic.
So we need to make a motion.
Unless there's any general questions that we won't get specific about the family, it would be a.
Short and sweet. To me, this is a no-brainer. And I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion for the approval to allow the open enrollment for this specific child.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Welcome.
Hey,
you're welcome.
Well, that was easy.
So they'll be expecting her tomorrow?
Okay.
All right.
All right, with that, everyone have a fantastic month. See you
Thank
next month.
you all.
Excuse me, you need an action from that.
I thought they approved the capital. We did.
So it wasn't-
Yes.
Okay, I'm like, oh, it's only been one of those days today.